introduced by Keyet Makonnen, who is the organizer of the Voices of African Women campaign.
My name is Keyet Makonnen, and I'm a member of the organizing committee in charge of this event today. I am the chair of the coordinator of WILF's Voice of African Women campaign, as well as the Women's Officer for the United Nations Association, London and South East region. In February of this year, in this very room, we celebrated the 10th anniversary of the Voice of African Women campaign. The members of the campaign spoke passionately about campaigns and political challenges to be overcome in their born countries. However, we have noted that our work has only just begun. We have much work to do. We know on the road to political campaign, we need to listen to learn. That is what we are here today to do. We are here to learn. We begin this second decade of the campaign in the spirit of our campaigners. It is with their support that I am honored and delighted to present the Voice of African Women campaign's keynote address of today's seminar. My longtime friend, Adrienne Diop. Adrienne attended Richmond College of London, now Richmond University, with me and graduated back in 1981. She went on to earn a doctorate degree in information science in 1990 at the University of Paris. She has taught at the University of Dakar in the Institute of Journalism. And after 15 years as a broadcast journalist in Senegal, she became a director of communications for the Economic Community of the West African States, ECOWAS. Dr. Diop has gone on to represent Senegal as the Commissioner of Human Development and Gender in ECOWAS Commission. In 2014, Dr. Diop was appointed Ambassador of Senegal to Malaysia. As of November 2018, she has officially retired but remains active in a number of important initiatives. We are grateful and honored to have her here with us today. Please give a warm welcome to Ambassador Dr. Adrienne Diop.
Good morning or good afternoon. I want to express first my appreciation to WILF for organizing this conference and allowing me to be part of this very interesting gathering. Allow me also to thank the Center of African Studies for the great contribution to this seminar and the UN Association Malaysia. And of course, she has gone, but my gratitude goes to Her Highness Princess Keyet Makonnen, my dear Kitty, Chair of the Voices of the African Women Campaign, for the invitation and for the opportunity to see each other after 40 years. And thanks also to all those who helped in organizing this conference, and last but not least, thanks to Stephanie and Grace, who have been of great help in organizing this meeting. So thank you very much. I am very honored to participate to this conference and contribute in a little way to the noble objective of WILFs. Women don't declare war, but more often they suffer more than any war else the consequences. Having seen the trauma and despair they suffer and the violence of women they suffer and they go through during the civil wars of Liberia and Sierra Leone, because I was part of the ECOWAS negotiating team to bring peace in that conflict. I have seen so many women running away with their children on their backs or holding them hand by hand, running away from conflict zones, abandoning all their belongings and walking hundreds of kilometers with their children to look for safe havens, and sometimes not knowing where they are going or even will they ever go back to their homes. So it's a pleasure and almost a privilege, a pilgrimage to come back here, where in London we have a lot of fond memories, as Kitty mentioned. After so many years, since I graduated in Richmond College, then now Richmond University in 1981. So you can see my emotion to coming back here, and I can say that my best years, I think I spent them here. So I'm really happy to be back here. I've been asked to talk about climate change and gender. I'll do that from a point of view of an African, of course, because most of you know what's happening in the West. Some of you know what's happening in Africa, but, and also from a point of view of a Senegalese. And I hope that you will live here with a better feel, of better knowledge of what climate change means to African, means especially to African women. Because climate change and gender have something in common. Until recently, whenever you mention these issues at seminars, forums, or international conferences, you were not taken very seriously. I know, because I was in charge of gender development when I was in ECOWAS. So anytime I come up with my speech, I say, well, okay, here she comes again. So, and I know that until recently, climate change and all the environmental issues have been that kind of connotation. And only now, the few climato-sceptics will agree that if you don't take seriously the issues, we will be in big trouble. And only if you're directly affected by it, you will know that it is important. Like all issues, until you feel the effects, until you know where it pinches you, you know that this is a very important issue. I'll just have an example. I was also in charge of labor, and when I was in ECOWAS, I was helping the member states to adopt a new legislation to favor women in their workplace. And of course, you had a divided environment where this group want to know, why do you want women to have more rights? Why do you want women to have more days after, her childbirth, etc., etc. Then I had a gentleman who came up to me, and then said, look, madam, I will support your document and I will do everything. I said, why? He said, because I have 5 daughters. And I want them to have good jobs and to be independent and to be at the highest level in the sector. So that gentleman, with few others he managed to co-opt, helped me pass this legislation. So until you really feel the pinch, you know what it means to be strong and to be affected by a cause. Today, no one there publicly denied the importance of these issues. And it is a known fact that leaving more than half of the population aside in terms of education, health, economy, or technology will only slow progress and development. All will also agree, except a few remaining climato-sceptics on the planet, and I know there are a few, and some of them at the highest level in some countries, that if you do not address these issues now, individually and collectively, the consequences of climate change, we would have failed the next generation, and we would have be leaving the planet in a terrible state. Because they are both cross-cutting issues, and nothing is more difficult to address than an issue where everybody has a role to play. Because everybody will be waiting for the other one to work first. And then even when they work first, they try to go against what the other one is doing. So it is one of the most complex issues to do, to work and bring together the issues of climate change and gender. And moreover, in an environment where you have developmental issues. So, not only talking about these issues is timely, considering what is happening right now that you're all aware. Because also I was not predestined to do so. Events in my professional life caught up with me. You heard what Kitty said about my professional career. Everything happened at random. It was not my career plan to be here talking about gender issues. But life, God has his ways, and then we just have to follow. I was not predestined to do so, and I'm here talking about how global warming, how climate change affects men and women differently. What can be done, especially to use the huge untapped women's potential to contribute to climate change adaptation and mitigation, especially in Africa. Being a journalist, like I say, in a former life, a newscaster and a TV program, opened my horizon. After some disappointment in covering political assignments, political is not always interesting, especially when you see that the changes are not coming as you hope that they will be coming. I become more interested in covering social issues and human-related topics. The challenges facing, for example, the traditional Senegalese fishermen. Fish is the first #1 export in Senegal, so it is a very important issue. The difficulties of the rice farmers in the Delta region, in the north of Senegal. Senegal is a rice eater population. My sister from the Gambia and Senegal here will know it. It's our staple food. So it is very important what relates to rice growing and farming. Also, especially that the rice is our staple food, and women are the most involved in this activity. Also, in the 80s, how HIV/AIDS was addressed in my country. And all these issues, just by chance, appear to concern more women than men. Working in ECOWAS as a Director of Communication and later as a Commissioner for Human Development and Gender, my commitment to gender equality became more compelling. Without it became something that I just felt that I had to do. And I initiated with, of course, all my team, a lot of activities towards that. ECOWAS, for those who don't know, includes 15 member states in West Africa. It's like the EU of West Africa. And then we drive a lot of programs for development. So as in charge of that sector, we work towards helping girls and young women to have access to education and training, because education and training is the base of everything. We create also enabling environments for women entrepreneurs, training young women also to acquire leadership skills, because it is important to be in the leadership group, otherwise you get nothing done. I'm sure some of you will understand very well what I'm saying. To help them, assist them, on top of the technical skills, how to get at the top at the political level. We also provide, that's on the health issue, fistula, surgery for women suffering from fistula. I don't know if you are all aware of it, but it's a very serious and very handicapping situation for young girls. We also provided a lot of training for rural women in rural areas into transformation of agricultural products, because West Africa being primarily an agricultural society, it is important that tomatoes are grown and then are transported and then are transformed and get to the consumer in a good condition and especially at a good price. We also help setting up incubators for women who created SMEs, because it is important to go to the next level. We also formulated policy on disaster risk reduction and provided humanitarian assistance. The West African region has suffered 2 civil wars, one in Liberia, one in Sierra Leone, with consequences not only in those countries, but in all the neighboring countries, and affecting even the region as a whole. At some point, all our attention was going not in education, not in health, but in stopping that war because war is like a cancer. It grows and affects everyone. So we had to provide humanitarian assistance to those countries, and especially the Liberian women who fled Liberia to Cote d'Ivoire, and some of them are still there, to assist them, how to get back their lives, and how maybe to go back to their original country. I mean, it's difficult once you have been a refugee for more than 10 years in the country to go back. You've lost your home, you've lost your family, you've lost your everything. So all these issues also, we were working towards that. Mainstreaming gender in the ECOWAS conflict prevention framework, because as we said at the time, it's good to address conflicts and try to put an end to war, but it's better to prevent them. While preventing them, the gender factor was very important, because women and children were the ones suffering most from these conflicts. They don't declare the wars, but they are the ones that are most affected. So our job also was to mainstream all the gender issues into this framework so that they can be taken into consideration when solutions were being preferred. Providing women also with peace and mediation skills so that they can be part of the high-level negotiating teams. Because you have this conflict, this war, women and children suffer more, and then you go to the negotiating table and you see a whole array of men. They decide, they say this, they say that. And women and children who did not create these conflicts, who did not cause them, have no say in how this conflict should be put out, how this fire should be put out. So we really had to mainstream, to make women part of these negotiating teams so that they could stand up, you know, and their voice could be heard and say, okay, this is the situation. After the war, we need this, we need that, so that we can regain our strength and our dignity. So all these activities and many others give me a diversified experience. But especially, it gave me a feel of the gender inequality existing in my region, which is West Africa. Now, how does climate change come in here? Studies have shown that inequalities between genders exist in accessing to education, healthcare, to funding, to services, to technology, to decision-making positions, to land ownership, are reflected in the way climate change affects men and women. Gender inequality in all these areas make the impact of climate change unequal. The same causes here produce the same effects there, creating therefore a strong link between gender equality, women's empowerment, and climate change. In other words, we can say that climate change is not gender neutral. I will not dwell into the causes of climate change because you are all familiar with it, and more authorized voices, you know, have spoken or will speak on this. But I would just, you know, like to recall some of the major consequences on our environment and on our lives. Melting in the ice mass in the poles and the rising sea levels. West Africa is surrounded by the Atlantic Ocean. So you can see the influence, the consequences that we have there. Important dramatic and weather changes. Already in West Africa, and if I talk to my country, Senegal, the rain patterns have changed. It will have serious consequences on the farmers. They have to readapt to new seasons, maybe to new crops, to new everything, to new life. And it's not easy. Because the rainfalls also have been shifting. So it's all a new way of doing things that you have to anticipate and think of. The change in ecosystems and desertification. My region is at the border of the Sahara, and it's called the Sahel. So you have the whole northern part, which is half desert. So how do you address that? the risk which come with it of human health, the increased risk of extension of some species, and then the heavy costs on the economy and on the society. But how does climate change relate to Africa? No continent, no country, no community, no economy has been or will be spared by climate change. That's a given fact. It cannot be stopped by national borders, be it rivers, mountains, man-made or natural. However, if you all experience negative consequences of climate change, there is ample evidence that it has adversely affected developing countries. Africa, with 13% of the world's population, contributes the least to the greenhouse emissions. Consequently, Africa has paid the least part in global warming due to low level of industrialization, but it will be the most impacted by it. Of course, you know all this already. To paraphrase Kofi Annan, no region has done less to contribute to the climate crisis than Africa. However, it stands to lose the most and pay the highest price if it fails to tackle it. In Africa, climate change issues were not a priority for a long time. It was very theoretical. We had other more pressing needs, like what am I going to eat today and tomorrow. So the idea that we must hand over the planet in a better condition than, or in the same condition or better to our future generation did not really mean much to most of us, until the related impacts became real and visible to them in the forms of typhoons, cyclones, rising temperatures, rainfall variability, and heavy floods. Then you say, wow, this is real. So we are part of this. Now what are we going to do about it? So now in Africa, when we talk about climate change impacts, we look at rising sea levels, faster coastal erosions with negative effects on population living in coastal areas and on fishing activities. Drastic changes in weather, which creates more drought, fires, floods, storms, cyclones, like in Mozambique and Malawi not long ago. Different rainfall patterns, which increases desertification, deforestation, and land degradation, especially for the most Saharan countries. New health issues, because the weather changes, everything changes, so you have new health issues. We already have the old one that we are still managing. So now you have, coming from nowhere, new diseases that you have to find out to adapt, and diseases that you don't see anywhere else. So you're not going to find the solution in the West. You have to find the solution in your own zone, in your own area, because the other scientists have nothing to do with it. So, new health issues with a shift in malaria transmission, for example, and new waterborne diseases. All of the above, leading to large movement of population seeking refuge in other areas, in other countries and other continents. The migration problem, you're all familiar with it, being experienced in developed countries, find its causes not only in conflicts, but also as a result of a degraded environment. Climate change affects negatively all species, human, animal, and plants, as it leads to increase of natural disaster. It has become now a threat to human security. But when we talk about Africa, there's one area where climate change has a huge impact. It is agriculture. We cannot change, we cannot help seeing how it's affected negatively. Agriculture is key to Africa's development because it occupies more than 60% of its active population. It's also mainly small-scale grain-fed, and experts are in the view that no region in the world has been more affected than the Sahel region. It is characterized by shrinking natural resources, especially land and water while experiencing a rapid population growth. The following trends are change in rainfall patterns, higher temperature, reduction of availability of water and quality of water, less hydropower energy leading to power outage, fluctuation of food production. The Sahel region is around 300 million people, and there is a fear that if urgent measures are not taken, yields from rain-fed agriculture in some Saharan countries would have reduced to 50%. If timely action is not taken to reverse these trends, the consequences of climate change in agricultural-based environments is a threat to food security, which in turn is likely to increase migration. Very known topic that is talked about, especially in Europe, and displaced person, and gender conflicts between farmers and herders, and also between communities. When we look at, allow me to talk about the case of Senegal, my country. It is considered the country that is most vulnerable to climate change. I can tell you a personal story. When I was younger, going to my mother's hometown village, I could see the ocean very far away. As I grew older, going there year by year, now the Atlantic Ocean is just, a few miles away. Very soon, the water will come in, and maybe that zone will become an island. Senegal is a country of 700 kilometers of coast, and that area is the most urbanized sector, vital to its economy and industry and fisheries. And that zone is host to 50% of the population. So the diagnostic for that zone is very gloomy, because if we see what scientists are saying about the projections, the temperature there is expected to rise by 1% to 1.1 to 1.8 Celsius. Changes in rainfall pattern are between -30 to +30%. Forecast sea levels continue to rise by 15 to 95 centimeters by 2100. Coastal erosion between 1.5 and 2 meters per year. It would have reached 20% in the Cape Verde Peninsula, where the capital is, and 109% inside the country, which is called the Sin Saloum Estuary, by 2050. And expected loss of lands will continue to grow between 3 to 25%. Here are some of the pictures of the climate change effects. You see how it is. This one, so next. This is an aerial view. You see, some of people living here will tell you that my bedroom was here, and now it has disappeared. Next. And this is the salinization of land. So we can't grow anything there for the next maybe 1,000 years. Next. Flooding. This is one of the parts, the suburban areas of Dakar. When it rains, you cannot go anywhere. Next. No, this is the next part. No. So the impacts are on so many sectors. Hydraulic, reduction by 50% of the Senegal River. Decrease of groundwater level, which means drinking problem. Deterioration of the water quality also, which leads to some diseases. Degradation of soil and vegetation, and loss of vegetation. Greater saline intrusion. When there is salt, there's nothing you can grow there. Desertification. Reduction of the mangrove forest, which is a very vital resource against tides. And some areas have been more vulnerable than others. When we talk about the ocean, rising sea levels, you have seen the pictures. Coastal erosion, you have seen it. The Little Coast and the Casamance region are losing to coastal erosion between 100 and 150 meters per year. 100 and 150 meters per year. The sea is going in. All these have serious consequences in agriculture. And when I talk about family farms, I mean farms women dominated, because in Senegal mostly farmers are women. And agriculture is highly rainly dependent. Only 5% is on irrigation. What are the consequences? Reduction of water availability, soil degradation, reduction of arable lands, huge fluctuation of food production, loss of revenue for farmers, and cereal production in a few years, high risk of food insecurity, affects livestock, exacerbs also conflict between farmers and breeders to access resources. The fisheries. Fish and seafood is the #1 export product to Senegal. 600,000 people live from fishing activities. And Senegal is the second provider of fish products in West Africa. And it contributes to 3.2% to the GDP. And the fishing process occupies 90% of women. So it's also a very gender-biased activity. The consequences: migration of major species of fish, scarcity of fish and reduction of seizure, making fish very expensive. Local consumption also in supply of protein. It affects also the economy, and because a lot of fish is exported also, less revenue for the export and less income for the traditional fishermen. How does gender and climate change relate in Africa? The role and the position of women. We have seen how women is central to this climate change. She's first of all a mother and a wife before anything else. She has less access to education, to resource, information, and technology. She has difficulty to own land. And she's no or very little involved in political or household making processes that affect her life. For these reasons, they are poorer and the more vulnerable segment of the society. I think you knew already that. And are highly dependent on natural resources that are, in turn, sensible to climate change. When we look at agriculture, it's one of the most impacted sector, and women make up 70% of that labor workforce. So what are the consequences? Increased burden for the woman in farming, water provision, food production. Spend more time finding fuels. More women than men die and get sick, which is a tragedy because they're the pillar of the family. Few full household responsibility because most men migrate to find jobs, leaving them, the women, to manage their homes. So while most women in rural areas are left behind to take care of the family, they try to adapt, among other things, to life between rising sea levels and land degradation. In Senegal, they formed association and took many initiatives to develop their own adaptation solutions and diversifying their activities, such as regenerating the mangroves, regenerating the mangroves one by one, reforesting, growing shellfish, apiculture, building anti-salt dikes to regenerate land and salinization, build community compost for vegetable production and soil fertility, building nurseries to regrow fauna and trees. So women are very active in this area. Now I'll conclude with what to do. If not addressed urgently, climate change will increase poverty and slow down progress towards achieving the SDGs. We have talked about SDGs earlier. For greater efficiency, climate change issues should be addressed at all levels: individual, local, national, region, and international. However, involvement should go beyond governments. Private sector, civil society, research institutions, and international organizations must be fully on board. There is an obligation to work hand in hand if we have to slow down this process. Just as important steps should be taken to understand the relationship between climate change and gender. It will contribute to effective climate change adaptation and policies. Studies have shown that climate change impacts men and women differently because of cultural norms. And to address this, therefore, it is imperative to pursue and to reinforce initiatives aimed at achieving gender equality and women's empowerment. Integrate women in mainstream gender perspective into climate change mitigation and adaptation policies. Improve women's preparation in disaster management. Include more women and gender experts in preparing documents for formulating national policies. Facilitating participation of more women and gender experts in delegation to regional and international forums on climate change issue. More communication, more networking so that their voice can be heard. A lot of progress has been done, but there's still a long way to go. To conclude, despite most the challenges identified, women in Senegal, and we can say for the whole African continent, have not waited for the government to start action by building resilience. They have not been acknowledged, by the way, in any policy document. In spite of their handicaps and because of their role and responsibility in the households and in the community, women are living up to what is expected from them with a myriad of small-scale activities that some of them I have shown in the slide here. They took the lead to find solutions to the negative impacts of climate change. When informed and capacitated, they have proved they can be agents of change and transformation. Transformation of their lives, transformation of their communities, transformation of their countries. And let's hope that decision makers faced with the devastating direct and indirect effects of climate change will realize that empowering women is one of the solutions. And maybe the gender equality could be achieved through one of the most expected channels. I thank you for the kind.
A fantastic speech and also very strong message. Unfortunately, we don't have that much time left for questions, so if there's anyone who's have very brief questions that you want to ask to Adrienne now, please raise your hand.
Bonsoir.
Bonsoir.
Je m'appelle Nene. I was looking at the pictures that she was showing, and I saw an arid land, like an empty land with some cracks. It's like calcare.
This one?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
It looks like somewhere I used to visit in Senegal, Fatick. You know, behind Fatick, in the Saloum, every area is like this.
Is that area?
Yeah.
Right.
It's Fatick, yeah?
Is that same
That area. Yeah, I was talking to a cousin of mine who is working in agriculture. He was the Abdoulaye Sey, I think he's well known in Senegal. And because I work a lot with different organizations, and I do a lot of charitable work with my mother's foundation and Ida Mboj, So I was suggesting I was talking to about taking a project in the Gambia and come to Senegal in Fatick because it looks like this. And I was suggested something like Tessito. It's like planting some trees in that area. But the thing, what he said was that it's difficult to plant trees around here because of the salt and things like that. So I'm thinking there are so many places that are like this in many parts of the world in Africa, and they're using this land, instead of leaving it like this, they're using it to attract tourists, and it could be built like in Jahau, you know, like the touristic areas. And I'm wondering if there's any leading organization in Dakar on sustainable development or on environmental issues that can, you know, confront the government and talk to them about using alternatives rather than leaving this empty land like this. So I wanted to know if there's any leading organization so that we can partner with them and, you know, see how best we can tackle these issues, because it's a very beautiful area. If you cannot plant anything there, you can use it as an income generating project to build something that will attract tourists to visit. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not aware, but maybe after we can talk about it and then see, how we can do this back there. I'm not aware of any organization that is doing that, but that's a good idea, and we can start from there.
Any more quick questions to Adrienne? Okay, again, obviously how you can ask questions over lunch and
Sure.
so please thank Adrienne.